And Chris, I hope you're hearing me.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to start this session, I guess.
Hello, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to our second day of our SEPIP 2023 conference. We are starting with first with the panel session, which is practically 10th in row, considering yesterday's day. So we'll start with the panel session, as I mentioned. First, being moderator, Professor Dr. Ali Akemek from Fukuoka University, Japan. Good morning. Then we have, as a panelist, Christopher G. Pope from the same university. We have also as a panelist, Li Jia from Niigata Prefectural University, Japan, and Changxie Li from Economic Research Institute for the Northern Asia from Niigata Prefectural University, Japan. So I will just want to say some words about our moderator. Professor Dr. Ali Akemek is a professor of economics since September 2017 at the Faculty of Economics at the Graduate School of Eastern Asia Studies at Yamaguchi University in Yamaguchi, Japan. He holds PhD from Nagoya University from 2006 and a master's degree from the Middle East Technical University from 1999. He is a member of Executive Board at Japanese Studies Association in Turkey and advisor to various research institutes, including Ankara University, Asia Pacific Research Center, and Hacettepe University Energy Markets Research and Application Center. His research interests include developing economics, Japanese economy, Chinese economy, input-output modeling, applied general equilibrium models, and behavioral economics. He is the author of numerous books and articles published in international journals, including the Journal of the International Development, Socioeconomic Review, European Journal of Operation Research, Energy Policy, Energy Economics, and many, many others. So, also, I will just want to announce the other speakers. Changxie Li, who is working as an associate professor at the Economic Research Institute for Northern Asia, Niigata Prefectural University, Japan. She's completed research for PhD at the Graduate Studies of Economics of Shenshu University, Japan, and a work PhD in economics. Her research interests include China's economy and innovation. Christopher G. Pope, however, is a lecturer of international politics economy at the Faculty of Commerce, Fukuoka University. His research focuses on China and Japan, and he's published research papers related to international monetary system, international trade, and Western economics. He speaks English, Japanese, and Mandarin Chinese. He graduated from the University of Sheffield in 2017, having completed an award-winning thesis on Japanese politics. Since then, he's worked as a Kyoto Women's University at Fukuoka University, where he has published various research papers on politics and economics in East Asia, as well as international political economy. And so we practically start with the panel now. The floor is yours. Professor Ali Akemek, can you start? Do we hear each other?
Okay, I think we're starting right now.
Yes, please. The floor is yours.
I couldn't hear your last few words, so sorry. Okay, so as the chair, I would like to welcome our three speakers today. We have two Lees and one Chris. And Professor Li Jia and Professor Li Junxia I hope I pronounced your names correctly. Both from the University of Niigata Prefecture and Chris, my fellow colleague from Kobe University. They seem to have a good command of Chinese language, not me. But we are four people from three different countries, all in Japan, but no Japanese. So I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to start going the list. Chris comes first. Chris, would you like to go first?
Sure, yeah, that's fine. I would also like to mention my wife's name is Lee, so I guess we're all connected. Okay, I will start with the screen share then, if you don't mind. And, oh, sorry, it says, because I'm not the host, I can't share my screen. I don't know how I'm going to, is there a way I can become a host here?
Just a second.
We can ask the post to enable.
Okay, just a minute.
If that's okay. So while it's happening, just let me say to anyone listening, I'm absolutely delighted to be able to present here today, and thank you for the opportunity. I hope that the presentation can be well of interest to you. I know that the focus is on East Asia, but this particular presentation, in order to save time, I'm going to focus on the US, but the question will be more of why does that change Japan's strategic position in the East? And so in order to understand that, last year I believe I spoke about de-dollarization and the rise of alternative methods of trade led by the BRICS countries. And so to build on that discussion, I thought to discuss what's happening in the US and how this impacts Japan's relationship with the US. So if I can show you the PowerPoint, then we'll begin, but I hope that's of interest to everybody here.
Intervene here, so we have three speakers here presenting. So I'd like to three of you to wrap up in 15 minutes so we can have some time for discussion. So feel free.
First, can you share the presentation now?
I can. That's excellent.
Okay.
I believe that's it.
Yes.
Okay. If I 1 second, please. Okay. Okay, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
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 That's visible to everybody, I hope. Okay. Right, well then, again, 1 second, I'm very sorry. Okay, let's begin. So I did want to talk about Japan, but in the interest of saving time, let us start with the conclusion for Japan and then move on to the Western economy. The issue at the moment, I'm sure you're aware, is that the Bank of Japan has loosened its control on the yield on the yield curve, 10-year Japanese government bonds, which is used as an indicator for investment long-term into the Japanese bond market. And it's done this because it wants to maintain a parity with the US, but the US treasuries are obviously increasing in interest because of quantitative tightening and tapering. So the backdrop to this is the low yields as a result of Japan's yield curve control have caused investors to turn their sights on long-term securities and equity markets, stock and things like that, particularly in the US. But inflation has changed this, and because of foreign exchange risk, a lot of firms have decided to short the yen. This causes the currency to depreciate and places a lot of pressure on, ironically, exporters, because inflation in the US obviously dwindles the purchasing power of potential clients. So Japan's in a bit of a difficult position. If it raises rates, it doesn't know what that does to financial risk in the Japanese economy. But if it keeps rates the way they are, then the Japanese yen will continue to depreciate, and this is terrible for mortgage-paying Japanese families. So the issue is that Japan needs international demand for Japanese credit so that it can find the need to repay its debt and find a way to achieve credit-based growth. So that's Japan's situation. Traditionally, it's done this by relying on the US market. And my analysis today, I hope, will demonstrate why you can't really do that at the moment. So let us begin, because there's only 15 minutes. There's a famous line in a film called The Godfather that says, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. That seems to be the relationship between the USA and its quantitative easing policies. If we look at the reverse repo market, for example, from 2010 to September, the end of September last month, versus the monthly average of USTs held outstanding by the Fed, we see an interesting dovetail, I think. I can't show you it today, but Chinese and Japanese purchases of US treasuries, of US sovereign debt, has declined, not increased. In fact, last month, China didn't stop purchasing USTs. It's likely then that USTs are carried out by financial institutions closely tied to the EST and the Federal Exchange. But these institutions are part of the US system, and so they don't really constitute international demand for US treasuries. So what happens with the USTs is a bunch of financial firms will buy up short-term, I don't know what the correct terms are, bills or bonds, just that mature over a day, and park it in the government, in the Fed, cash in the Fed, and take these bonds out while the Fed promises to repurchase them later. So it's a kind of deposit mechanism for these banks. And as inflation hit, lots of financial firms obviously put their cash into this. But recently we see towards the end of this graph, for example, that has gone down, and about $1 trillion or more has been taken out. And I think that this has probably gone into treasuries because I'll explain later, actually credit extension in the USA has dwindled, and so has the money supply. So if that's the case, then it seems likely that these financial institutions have invested in US treasuries and not foreign countries, which is a big deal, as I'll explain. So what was quantitative easing? Well, quantitative easing allowed commercial banks to profit from arbitrage on interest rates by investing in various forms of derivatives. The idea is to invest basically in interest rate swaps, which are over the counter, so don't require a clearinghouse that makes them pretty hard to regulate. But in times of inflation and in interest rate hikes, there's the issue of counterparty risk and asset impairment, because these assets that they're holding on their books lose value. And companies don't have to report that, but if everyone decides to take their stock or money out of this company, then as like Silicon Valley Bank, for example, you'll find that, how should we put this? The reality begins to set in quite quickly that this company is insolvent. But we don't know what financial obligations and how these companies are tied to other companies, third parties. And so there's a risk of a sort of chain reaction financial crisis because everybody's kind of buying each other's derivatives and assets and things like this. Also, one of the reasons I believe that China and other countries are lowering their purchases of US treasuries is because of the inflation, or should I say excessive monetary printing. I should say that there's a theory that because commercial banks create the money supply, that the Fed doesn't really have an influence on this. But to move back to this, as we can see, there's been substantial money put in by financial institutions into this reserve repo facility, and all of a sudden this has been withdrawn. But what has the government done with this money? It purchases bonds. So when they withdraw it, if I just get this right, they take their cash back out, and the government. So look, I don't want to go on because we need to carry on. But one of this idea is that the Federal Reserve ring fences its money, so that it can't get into the real economy and cause inflation. But this is clearly a mechanism in which that can happen, and has happened, because of Federal Reserve, because of government spending in physical projects. So this is, the money supply in the US has increased massively, and as we'll see, is about to come down. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. The US Treasuries, QE has lowered demand for US Treasuries international, I believe, because as the dollar depreciates, then what you can sort of earn as your Treasury, as your bond matures, has a relatively declined purchasing power to what it was before. So if you get $30 for my US Treasury now, but there's inflation, and I get $35 in 5 years' time, my purchasing power of my $30 now might be significantly higher than the $35 in 5 years' time. This is one of the reasons why they might decide that purchasing US Treasuries is not a long-term strategy. But this is the real issue, that this is the annual growth of the US money supply. So we have the left-hand axis there is the growth rate, that's the line, and the dollars aggregates are on the right-hand side. So we can see as the US debt has substantially increased, actually, the growth rate of the money supply has this year declined. The only other times it has ever done that was in the late 1900s, which was the Long Depression, then the Great Depression, and now. And it's never done that, except these 3 times, essentially. Except if you look at the aggregates of the debt that exists, there's substantially more dollars in the economy than there are now than there were before. And I believe this measurement includes gold stocks as well. So what accounts for this? Well, a lot of things, but this really accelerated during COVID. This is because the banks began to borrow from the Fed discount window, and the discount rate was lowered by 2 percentage points, and extended loans from overnight to 90 days. The Federal Reserve then reduced requirements to 0% effective March the 6th, eliminating any reserve requirements for all depository institutions in loan issuance, no requirements whatsoever. Then it began lending directly to the banks and stopped imposing restrictions on the number of transactions or withdrawals permitted in savings accounts. So commercial banks could basically change savings accounts into transactions accounts, and then there's no limits on withdrawal as well. So people can take the money out of the accounts very easily, which is a substantial risk. So we can see the total public debt has skyrocketed, but at the same time, the yields, you can see the period of quantitative easing after the 2008 great financial crisis, where the US one-year yields are very, very low, and then only begin to rise again during the Trump administration, and then plummet again due to COVID. But the interesting thing is, as of mid-2022, these rates skyrocketed, and not only that, but they inverted, meaning that buying one-year US Treasuries had higher yields than buying 10-year ones, which would indicate, therefore, that of massive market uncertainty. This is usually taken as an indicator of a recession, and this has persisted for over a year. And the margins between the 1 year and the 10-year, when the 1 year is more expensive, is higher than it's been in the entire data set. So what are the other signs of the recession? Well, government outlays soared 15% to 646 billion in June. The tax receipts sank by 9.2%. So you've got more outlays, less income. The deficit therefore nearly tripled from 89 billion a year ago to 228 billion a year. The deficit is 1.393 trillion, already the 3rd highest on record. This was recorded in December, and it's for annual estimates. The only time that it was ever higher was for the annual deficit recorded in 2020 and 2021 during the COVID lockdowns. And we're only in, this is only September, there's an entire quarter left to go here. So household debt is $17.1 trillion, mortgages is $12 trillion, automobile loans $1.6 trillion, credit card debt is $1 trillion. And the delinquency rate for the credit cards increased by 0.6 percentage point, which surpasses pre-pandemic levels. So inflation is cutting into people's ability to spend. Now, if you're an exporter to the US market, say like China and Japan, this is a big deal. This all occurred while the combined assets of the three banks that went insolvent, First Republic Bank, Signature Bank, and Silicon Valley Bank, exceeded the combined assets of the 25 banks and trusts that failed in the US in 2008. So in terms of asset value, this is already, there's been losses greater than those recorded in nominal terms than those that happened during the Great Financial Crisis over, about 15 years ago. The 30-year mortgages are at 7.67%. So just compare that to the delinquency rate of credit cards. How are people going to pay for this? And so Fitch Ratings, little surprise really, one of only 3 private credit rating firms downgraded its US credit rating to AA+, which means they have to pay more on interest. I'm pretty sure this issue will get resolved, but at the time of this presentation, there's no Speaker of the House, and the US Congress must address the debt ceiling as well. And so this is another reason why there's financial risk. So inflation is at its highest level since 1981 at 8.1%. Consumer confidence is obviously low. Mortgage demand is the lowest since 2001. There's about a 10 to 12% increase in social security spending and a 15 to 20% increase in medical care. So for context, as much as I'd like to talk about the history more, but I'd like to keep this brief. In 1928, the Fed raised the federal funds rate over the course of 7 months from 3.5% to 5%, and then again to 6% later on. So in roughly 80 months, it raised the discount rate by 2.5%. There's economists like Milton Friedman, for example. I don't agree with everything he said, but one of the things that he's famous for saying is that this raise of the federal funds rate is what caused the Great Depression. So in roughly 20 months, that was raised by 2.5%. Well, in February 2022, the discount rate was 0.25%, and in 16 months to June 2023, it was raised by 5% to 2.5%. So the extent of the increases surpasses that even of just before the Great Depression. And there's been a collapse, a shrinking of the money supply. Now, depressions are caused not by a shrinking of money supply per se, but a slowdown in credit, which brings us on to the next graph. Here's the slowdown of credit from 1974 to September the 20th, 2023. You can see that during the Great Depression, there was a slowdown in credit. And since then, there was a recovery at the cost of quantitative easing and all this public debt. But again, in 2023, this has gone below zero, indicating a depression of some sort. So the long-term problem is this, and this is why Japan and China and other East Asian nations are reconsidering their position in the economy. The US used to be a cheap export market, but inflation's eating away at consumer confidence, and there's no confidence in consumer power. And investing in US securities now in the time of inflation is massive, is of a huge risk. And also these, the China, India, Japan have to think about currency exchange, foreign exchange risk, currency risk. And in times of inflation, it might be more appealing for these investors to begin regional and even national investments to hold their assets and repatriate their assets to their own country in order to hedge against this risk. So the long-term problem for the US is that the Treasury faces a steady increase in the rates it pays on outstanding debt, even after it lowers the interest rates because of maturing debt. So even if the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen or whoever comes out and says, oh, this is a mistake, we need to lower the rates, it's already been about a year, and all of that excess, the increase in the interest rates still has to be repaid. So the Exchange Stability Fund, it's not Stability, Stabilization Fund, will buy bonds for the first time in decades. And it's likely to do this at par value. So due to the budget deficit, it will have to issue trillions of new bonds and also handle the approximately 3 trillion in maturing bonds. Who's going to buy them? So if China and Japan, particularly China, consider that this is not the time to buy US bonds, the US is in trouble because it cannot generate the revenue it needs to meet its budget requirements without somebody buying these bonds. So Japanese and Chinese bond purchases of US treasuries have declined, even Japanese ones, which is very rare. Withdrawals from reverse repo up to $1 trillion. So it's likely that US financial institutions are buying these bonds at the moment. But it needs international demands from USDs to function, and there appears to be no real demand for it anymore. So if I've got time, I'd like to talk about Japan, but I think I'm probably overgoing it. So I'll finish with the conclusion. The international political economy is bifurcating between the West and the rest. There's this rules-based order that is propounded by the US, and then there's this multipolar world order that's propounded by emerging powers, shall we say. So China and other BRICS nations are leading the drive to this multipolarity. And they're developing new sort of international trade settlement mechanisms and sort of trading in their own currencies now and not using the US dollar. If these countries don't use the US dollar, there's literally no reason why they buy US treasuries. And that is a big problem for the US. It cannot function without someone buying these treasuries so that it can generate revenue enough to meet its own budgetary requirements. This is the same problem that faces Japan as well. So Japan similarly must secure demand, international demand for Japanese credit. And as much as I'd like to talk about Japan today due to sort of limitations on time, I think that it's likely due to the rise, due to these changes in the international political economy, Japan is going to have to consider its position of buying up these US treasuries in bulk and consider if there are any other areas where they can secure credit, for demand for Japanese credit. And this they might find in developing areas in Asia and possibly even Central Asia through various sort of economic frameworks that exist, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative being one of them. So let me just finish here. I hope that that's interesting for everybody. I don't know how much time I've taken. I wish I was there so I could see everybody listening. But thank you very much for your time. And I hope, I look forward to answering any questions you might have. Is that all right, Ali?
I think we're running short of time, so maybe we should move to the next speaker. But I'd like to meet in person in your office to get some investment advice later.
Yeah, don't take it from me.
Yeah, so Rika-san, or Ija, I call you Rika-san with your Japanese reading of your name. Ija-san, would you like to go next?
Okay. Let me also share my slides for a moment. Can you see my slide?
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay. Okay, let me start. Well, I only have the 15 minutes, so I will try to keep it short. So basically today, I want to talk about the recent change of the China's industrial policy, and especially one of the new policy instruments which is quite interesting is government guidance funds. Government guidance fund is really interesting, however unique, but it has not attracted much of the attention from the scholars. So I hope I could also find a colleague we can work together on this topic. So that would be the topic of my presentation. So let me keep the background part really short. So when we talk about China's industrial policy, 2006 is considered as a turning turning point. And turning point because the industrial policy after the 2006 becomes more focused on innovation. So it is more like the industrial innovation policy instead of the traditional industrial policy. And it's unique in many aspects, but let me just keep it short. 2006, it's a turning point. It has a new national strategy. It's called the Medium and Long-Term Program of Science and Technology. And since then, the word of the indigenous innovation has been repeatedly mentioned in the context. So indigenous innovation, so basically, you can sense it's talking about how to reduce the China's reliance on foreign technologies. And also it mentions the 16 mega projects, including like the nuclear reactors or civilian airplanes, those kinds of really huge projects funded by government funds. So it's all state-funded 16 mega projects. And then in 2010, it becomes more concrete, more like the policy instead of the grant vision. So there are strategic emerging industries programs, and it has 20 target industries in 7 major areas. And the interesting point is, at this point, the policies focus on the 7 areas, and all of those 7 areas actually somehow, to a certain extent, all represent the opportunities for leapfrogging development. So it's not like the catch up with the technologies of the developed countries. It's more talking about surpassing or the leapfrogging. So those industrial sectors all somehow having the elements that have not been fully mastered by other countries. And then 2015, it comes to the famous Made in China 2025 and the Internet Plus programs. And let me just add one more word of the Made in China 2025. It caused a lot of the discussions and a lot of the criticism. So basically, Made in China 2025, now it's very hard to find it in the government's like the document. It's kind of like sliding down, toned down and sliding all of the thing gradually. And then in 2016, there is a master plan cover all kinds of the specific policies until that moment. And since then, the innovation-driven nation building, innovation-driven development has become kind of the keywords to be mentioned in all kinds of the government's policy documents. And there is also another thing is, since the 2005-2006, there is already the launch of the industrial guidance funds, but since the 2016, there is a huge, massive, the movement to the so-called government guidance funds, and I'm going to show you a little bit details about how these funds have been operated, and how it's different from the traditional like industrial policy tools. And then, of course, 2017, there are some new trends, and there is a lot of efforts focusing on the general purpose technologies, which lead to the military or civilian fusion plans. Basically, that is a kind of the story until this moment. So if we want to summarize what is the kind of the characteristics of the China's industrial policies after the 2006, we can say leapfrogging is a keyword. And also there is a kind of the system adjustment. So from the grant vision, gradually it becomes a more specific, has a specific policy tools such as government guidance funds, and to lead to the more concrete implementation. And I'm not going to talk about it today, but there is also the establishment of the national innovation systems, which aims to build ecosystems as a fundamental structure to bring about innovations. So to link various actors which are supposed to be important in the innovation activities. Okay, so government's guidance funds, let's first of all to see how much of the government funds have been entering into the equity market of China. So this graph is telling us like about 37% of the funds in the China's equity market actually comes from the government funds. So government basically is becoming the important funding source for China's equity market and directs the capital to the emerging strategic industries like semiconductors or like the smart manufacturing. And talking about the government funds, there are different types of the government funds. And how about how important the guidance fund is? So basically, there is a little bit yearly change, but the government guidance funds seems to consist of about 40% of the government funds in the equity market. And there is another one which shows the similar size. It's called government financing vehicles, but it's very different. So government financing vehicles is especially increased after the 2008 global financial crisis. So it's more like established by the local governments to invest directly in construction projects. So it's not talking about the high technology. It's not talking about the nurture of the emerging sectors. It's more about construction projects, that's all. And the guidance fund is very different. It has a policy targets in high tech, in strategic industries. And also, it's not necessarily limited to state-owned companies. So the funds could also be directed to private companies for their business. So it's very different. Okay, let's go back to a little bit the definition and the expectation of the government on these guidance funds. So guidance funds is a new financial instrument to accelerate technology catch-up and leapfrogging. And government funds include the funds established by different levels of the government, and it is a hybrid fund. It partners with the private investors, and it focuses the investment in high-tech or strategic emerging sectors, and it's expected to broaden the capital access for SMEs, for ventures, for startups, while at the early stage of the establishment. And when the government introduced these guidance funds, their expectations are mentioned in these 4 areas. So one thing is to make use of the idling public sector's revenue, so public funds, public money. And it tries to link the government investment and private venture capital. It also could allow the government to leverage the private sector's investment expertise, which government officials obviously lack of. And it also tries to support or nurture the emerging high-tech business. So that's a kind of the image. So what in reality it looks like? So if we look at a little bit the increase, the development of the government funds since 2012, it's clear that there is a huge increase here. So for 2015, it suddenly increased. It suddenly increased, and the peak is 2016. And after that, it seems that it declined a little bit. The number has been keeping increasing, but the fund itself, the capital mobilized is not like increasing that fast. So there is a little bit like decline. And if we compare these government guidance funds with the physical expenditure for science and technology, at its peak, it almost reached the level of the physical expenditures for S&T. So it is really the massive size. Well, why it declined after like the 2017? Well, one reason is probably like the economic slowdown and the trade war or tech war between China and the United States, and also COVID-19. And also another one is probably the tightened regulations on financial institutions due to the fear of the financial crisis domestically in China. And then if we look at the distribution by regions, and mostly we can say east, north, south. So basically, the relatively developed regions receive more funds, and the more inland or less developed regions have less, guidance funds. Well, that's probably natural. And if we look at the administrative divisions distribution, and most of the funds actually has been established and managed at the level of the provincial government and the city government. So local government, but not the central government, they clearly is the main actor, main player of this guidance fund story. And also the picture is very mixed. If we look at the percentage of the guidance funds, which actually has been mobilized compared to its target size, there is a yearly change, and sometimes only less than 40% of the capital actually could be mobilized compared to its target at the beginning. And some years there is more than 70%. But in general, we see clearly there is a gap between the goal of the government or between the goal of the guidance funds and the capital they actually could be mobilized from the market. And also, if we look at how this fund has been managed, so for this slide, the one thing I want to address is here. So because most of the funds is like established by the local government, and we can imagine local governments, basically they face the pressure of the local employment, local economic growth. So as a result, so it's supposed to more focus on strategic new industries, but there are also a lot of, at least according to this survey conducted in 2021, a little bit less than half of the funds, actually they focus on so-called local specialty industries. And also what kind of the companies they have been focused. So the government's the expectation is they could nurture the startups, they could nurture the early stage of the companies, but actually there were 38% of the funds actually the kind of more focus on the matured or the growing stage of the companies. Well, that's also probably understandable because the early stage companies or projects are more like the high risky. Well, and also guidance funds usually they require the certain proportion of the capital in the region, in the local companies, regardless of the regional resource like the endowments. And there are many different ways of how to meet these local investment requirements. But basically, we can say for most of the guidance funds, they required 2 times of the capital to be invested in the region the fund has been established. So it's quite the high level of the requirements, strict requirements. Okay, I'm out of my time. So I just want to see, well, it seems to strategically, it's very important policy instruments for China. However, the government guidance fund seems didn't receive much of the scholarly attention. So whether it is a fund bubble or it is a really effective policy instruments, we probably need a little bit more examination. And I found some studies which try to examine the implementation outcomes of these guidance funds. Well, all the 4 studies I found didn't show positive results for the implementation of the guidance funds. And this one in 2021 probably is more comprehensive. They talk about the government guidance funds raised less money than planned, and it didn't attract qualified private partners. And because there were too many of the government guidance funds. So they actually invested in the similar projects and leading to the redundancy and inefficiency. And since there is no clear or the good evaluation mechanism, so many of the guidance funds are poorly listed and many of the funds are wasted. And also the guidance fund is less willing to invest in early stage of the companies. So it's probably not a very good conclusion for my presentation. So I think basically what I want to see is guidance fund is unique. It's not subsidy. It's not a traditional like the industrial policy. It's a mix of the government intervention and market mechanism. And that's what makes it unique and interesting. But since in Chinese context, there are so many local government is play a role like the venture capitalist. So if this leads to kind of like good competition or bad competition among regions, does the government funds crowd in or they actually crowd out the private capitals? So we probably need a little bit more research in the field. It's just a very mixed picture at this moment. Okay, let me stop here.
So I think we're quite overusing our time here. So it's almost evening time here in East Asia. So thank you, Li Junxia, Professor Li Junxia, for your patience. So I'd like to turn to you.
Thank you, Professor Ali. Hello, everyone. My name is Li. Let me share my PowerPoint. Okay, can you see in my PowerPoint? Okay, let me start now. Hi, hello everybody. My name is Li. First, thank you very much for giving me this chance to make an presentation. I am from the University of Niigata Prefecture, Japan. Today, I will make a presentation on China's intellectual property strategy. In 2010, China became the world's second largest economy in terms of nominal GDP. But capital input played a leading role in China's economic growth, and the contribution of innovation to economic growth is low. During the mid-2000s, the Chinese government proposed an economic growth shift towards innovation and positioned innovation as a national strategy. And in 2006, China released the National Medium and Long-Term Science and Technology Development Plan outline. This outline includes increasing the ratio of research and development expenditure to GDP to at least 2.5% by 2020, and raising the annual number of patent registrations. And the Chinese government is encouraging domestic companies to engage in research and development and obtain intellectual property rights, especially patents, because patents are regarded as the fruits of innovation. In 2008, China released the National Intellectual Property Rights Strategy outline. The main goals for the next 5 years are as follows: increasing the number of intellectual property rights, such as patents, and increasing the number of patent applications filed overseas, and so on. This line chart shows the gross domestic expenditure on R&D in the USA and China and Japan, Germany and Korea. From 1991 to 2021, In 1991, China's R&D expenditure was only $9 billion, much less than other countries. By 2009, it had increased to $184 billion. Since then, China ranked second in the world after the USA. In 2021, China's R&D expenditure was $667 billion. This amount is about 83% of the US's R&D expenditure. And this figure shows the ratio of R&D expenditure to GDP in the 5 countries mentioned above. Prior to this line is China. Prior to 2001, China's R&D expenditure accounted for less than 1% of its GDP. However, since the 2000s, the ratio has steadily increased in China and reached 2.43% in 2021. Since the 2010s, the number of patent applications filed by Chinese applicants has rapidly increased, both domestically and abroad. This figure shows the trends in the number of PCT applications by China, USA, Japan, Germany, and Korea. The PCT means the Patent Cooperation Treaty. It is an international treaty with 157 contracting states. The PCT makes it possible to seek patent protection for an invention simultaneously in a large number of countries by filing a single international patent application instead of filing several separate national or regional patent applications. In 2000, this line is China. In 2000, the number of PCT international patent applications from China was only 782. But in 2022, China has filed more than 70,000 PCT applications, making it the country with the highest number of PCT applications in the world. This table shows the total number of the patent applications submitted by China, USA, and ZOA. This row represents all applications from applicants residing in China. And this row is the number of domestic applications. And this row is the application to other countries. Although the total number of patent applications in China is very large, but most of them are domestic applications. From 2010 to 2021, only 4% to 7% of China's applications were filed domestically. Sorry, excuse me. Only 4% to 7% are filed into other countries. In contrast, in the USA and Japan, the number of applications to foreign countries accounts for around 45% of total. And as for In Germany, the number of applications to foreign countries accounts for approximately 60%. And this table shows the total number of patents granted by all patent offices in the world. China has many patents granted, but most of them are registered domestically. Only 5% to 9% are registered abroad. This is much lower than Japan, USA, and Germany. Now, I'd like to explain about PCT application. A PCT patent application is just the initial step in the application process. If the applicant wants to obtain a patent right, it is necessary to enter the national phase in each country within 30 months. It's necessary to enter the national phase. And applicant needs to request to each country's patent office for examination. If the application meets the patent requirements, it could be granted, and then the application can obtain the patent right. Then I got all the PCT application data filed by applicants whose residence is in China, USA, Japan, and Germany in 2016 and 2020 from WIPO's database patent scope. This column represents the number of all PCT, the total number of PCT applications, and this column is the number entered the national phase to at least one country. Then you can see in 2016, 85% of the PCT application filed by Japan have entered the national phase to at least one country. And USA is 71% and Germany is 78%. However, only 38% of China's PCT applications have entered the national phase. As I have said, if applicant doesn't enter national phase, they cannot get a patent right. And here is my conclusion. The total number of patent applications from China is increasing rapidly, but most of them are domestic applications, and only a few of them are filed abroad. Although China has the highest number of PCT applications in the world, less than half of the applications have entered the national phase. It appears they just filed their patent application, but they don't want to obtain patent rights. So, it seems there is a patent bubble in China. China is increasing patent applications because it wants innovation to be the engine of growth. But the important thing is not to increase in the number of patent applications, but rather the value of the patents. Okay, I will finish my presentation here. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this was the Asian perspective and also American perspective in the first presentation. So we'd like to spice it up a little here. I would like to turn the moderator. Do we have any time for discussion, or shall we just move to the next session? Because we are I think we are 8 minutes past.
Yes, practically. Thank you very much to you and to the panel speakers. We are Yes, we are 8 minutes late and the presenters are waiting to start. However, we can have, let us say, 5 minutes for a question. Do we have any question? Yes?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can they hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for the well-prepared presentations. I have a question regarding the last presentation on these patents. I found it very interesting, the findings of our colleague that she said that most of the patents are only domestic. I mean, and this is something very interesting because, I mean, China produces a lot of products which are sold abroad, in Europe and USA, and I cannot imagine that they are only copyrighted only in their domestic market, and that they do not gain any worldwide protected trademark, for instance, or for the patent. And secondly is, yes, that's actually the main question. Why they are only domestic? Yes, and the second one exactly is that you said that the applicants, they don't want actually to have a protected rights. And why did you say that? I mean, what kind of finding is that? I couldn't follow. So correctly. Is it clear? There was a statement from the colleague that she said that the applicants, at the end, they don't want to have rights on their patents. So I didn't understand that.
Okay, thank you for your question. Yes, I think you are right. Because most of China's company, their business are made in China. So maybe it is not so necessary to file and patent to foreign countries. But instead, I didn't have that. I want to explain another thing. In fact, in China, there is a high-tech company. If a Chinese company is certified as a high-tech company, they can use a lower corporate tax rate from government. So, in order to become a high technology company, a company must meet several conditions. For example, they need to pay more money on research and development. And they also need to get a lot, and they also need to file a lot of patents and get more patents granted. And they also can get some subsidy from local government. So in China, many companies want to use a lower corporate tax rate. So they do their best to file many patent application, unless it doesn't have many value. So the most thing I want to say is that the Chinese government is right to promote innovation, but they are not right to encourage their company only to file more patents. The most important thing is to how to improve the quality of Chinese companies' innovation. Sorry, I don't know if I have explained clearly. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you very much. So, if I may ask a very quick question, I was really impressed by the presentation by Li Jia about the government guidance funds. I find them really interesting presentation, and I have a really short question to her. Since those funds are practically private public funds, let's say with a dual mandate to produce finance returns and as well to accelerate the state's industrial policy goals, I was thinking how you consider what was the impact of these funds related to the totally the government's funds which are doing the same cause, and what is about the return, whether the return to those private investments first the investors are receiving some returns, and what is the returns related to the other private funds, much higher, lower, similar. So what your research has shown about that? It is a question to the Licha. Do we have Licha with us?
On mute. Okay. Thank you very much for your question. Actually, there is no systematic information on that aspect, but there is a little bit like the one piece of the information. And there is a comparison of the government sponsored returns compared to private equity funds. And the government guidance funds, the returns ratio is lower. There is that kind of information. But I have to say it's not systematic information. There is no good statistics on it. It's just the one piece of the information. Well, that's I think one of my response. And another thing I have to say is government guidance funds seems to like have a lot of the responsibilities. The responsibility does not including like the traditional private equity funds. It has a lot of policy goals, and policy goals including like local governments, like economic growth or local like employment creation or whatever. So it's hard to judge it. So the evaluation system is also very weak, and the only thing I can see is local governments seems to compete with each other, but they compete each other more in the terms of their localities' interest. For example, I didn't have time, so I'll pass that part. There is a quite famous example which mentioned by many mass media in recent years is talking about a city called Hefei. Hefei is not the first tier famous city in China at all, but that company, one interesting example is in early 2020, there is an EV company called NIO. And NIO is facing the financial crisis, and facing the problem of the bankruptcy. And the Hefei government funded the NIO. And finally, they didn't try to get the controlling interest in the company NIO. Actually, they quickly sold out their stakes after the NIO's company's performance got better. And they got huge bunks of the returns through that investment. So it's kind of like difficult to judge the behaviors of such kind of government fund. It's not only for the profit. Sometimes it's clearly for the profit, but sometimes it's not for the profit. So it's a little bit difficult to generate the solid conclusion at this moment. That is what I want to add to that discussion. I hope I answer your question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will search a little deeper about these funds. So whether it can be introduced in our country, of course. Okay, so thank you very much to all participants. I like the presentation of Christopher Koch, so I'd like, even if you can share with us, so it was a very good case study about the current situation in the United States. So all of your presentation was excellent. So I would like to thank all of you and to Professor Akemik. And so we are going forward with our presentation, our paper presentation session, which we are really late, but somehow we will cope later on. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and good evening.
Yeah, good evening to you. With us, it's morning. So we are moving to our session. Shall we make at least just to prepare to see who are our participants here in this first session? We have a presentation by Professor Sabri Oz and Mehmet Tanyash. We don't know whether they will present online. We don't know whether she is with us. Yes.
You hear me?
Yes, I just want to, if you don't mind, I would just want to go through all participants for this session, just to see whether they're here. So we have Professor Victoria Mangarovska with us. We have Tane Dimovski with us online. We have Zeynep Baysiyegekan with us here, present. We have Darfin Kurtel with us as well, presenting her paper with the Dr. Salati Rahman Burdu. Do we have Malik Mohammed or Faisal from Pakistan? No, practically. Professor Savica, Professor Marti Veseli, and Depesh Katel. Do we have here contacts? So maybe we're just missing two people from the group. Otherwise, all of us are here. So, Professor Sabri Oz, I'm giving you a floor,
Yes.
so you can start and share your presentation. You can share your presentation online.
I think we should share ourselves. Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yes, no problem. I think, yeah, okay. First of all, I want to thank to the SEPIP organization, especially organization committee of this conference, or this international conference. And let me say, first of all, my dear colleagues and esteemed colleagues, I greet you with my deepest respect from Istanbul, and also convey the greetings of our teacher, Professor Mehmet Tanyash, also. And when we turn to our presentation, our subject, it is about unemployment actually and digital transformation. And we are facing with the logistics sector and via an AHP analysis, which is an anti-piracy process. And let me, yes, is it changed the page? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Here's our abstract, but I know that we have 10 minutes, so I want to use the time efficient and do not read the full, but I want to say something about our presentation. The main goal and the aim of the presentation, and especially the scope of the presentation, is including the components of the digital transformation, which are data integrity, unification, augmented reality and virtual reality, and other realities actually, such kind of mixed reality and mixed reality and expert reality, and also artificial intelligence, machine and deep learning, blockchain and IoT and its derivatives, which is industrial IoT and also IoT, Internet of everything, rather than Internet of things, and Internet of human also, and big data mining and cybersecurity. And our sectorial scope is, of course, logistics, but we mainly focusing on storage management and fleet management. And we have some phenomenological experience businessmen and participants to our study from Istanbul. And so we did an AHP analysis for our purpose. Now, when we talk about AHP analysis, an anti-hierarchy process, it is a kind of multi-criteria decision-making process, first of all, we have to know that. And it is some kind of pairwise comparison in between the criteria of the in between the criteria of the decision-making. And one of the main criticism about this analysis is mainly can be said on subjective data, because we are collecting data by the opinions of the experienced participants. So we are using 1 to 9 scale of Saati, who is the inventor of the AHP analysis in 1965-70s, and the main idea behind that scaling is to turn the data from qualitative to quantitative. So we are calculating the consistency of these opinions via these quantitative study, and finally we give the weight of the criteria and try out the weight of each criteria. Our main question can be explained as in the slide right now, when we ask which one of the digital transformation components has more effect on unemployment in both fleet management and storage systems. Meanwhile, logistics systems does not compose just fleet management and storage systems. We know that, but here we just decided to make this analysis on just fleet management and storage systems as a pilot area. As a recommendation, we will come later. We offer also extended areas of logistics also. The question structure for our study to our participants, the 8 components were our criteria, the 8 components of technology and digital transformation, which are used also in ASI 4.0, were our criteria. Pairwise questions, which means that 8 components combinations of 8 to 2, which brings 21 main questions, but for every question we need 2 answers, choosing the effective one and deciding the importance, multiplier as from 1 to 9 as a degree of importance. So in total for every participant gives 42 answers to our questions. Sorry. Here are some examples for our questions. Which of the blockchain and AI technologies affect unemployment in fleet management more? How important in this criteria? Here, the participant, we are waiting for the participant choose one of them and give the degree of the importance for that criteria. As a second one, which of the blockchain and AI technologies affects unemployment with storage management more, and how important is this criteria also can be given as an example. Now, when we take the main tables and calculate and finally come to an end table, we can say that there are 8 criteria, and the result for storage management is consistent, because the consistency ratio is less than 0.10. So by calculating its eigenvalues and related random index of Saati's table, and we will get the following table. And according to this table, we can say that the storage management have mainly influenced by artificial intelligence and machine and deep learning, with the 31% of within the pool criteria. And when we see the second one, it is on IoT and derivatives. Am I right? Yes. IoT and its derivatives also has an important role, plays an important role on unemployment in storage management. And the least effect has cybersecurity instead with 3%. When we look at the other side, as fleet management, we can say that when we calculate the given data, it is also consistent and with 0.06, less than 0.10, and with the related random index, we can say that in total, 27 point, which is 27% in between the pool. Augmented reality and virtual reality technologies would be an important role, play an important role in fleet management side unemployment issue. So the second one is also here in the storage management, artificial intelligence with 24%. And again, the communication and cybersecurity have the least value effect in fleet management also. Now, when we summarize, actually, for artificial intelligence is affecting both sides of unemployment manner, and artificial intelligence technology, including machine learning and deep learning, with 31% of have the most effect on unemployment in storage management, whereas cybersecurity has the least effect. And also the second effect component criterion for the storage management is IoT, as we have mentioned, and its ratio was 24. And once more, AR, VR technologies, 27% have the most effect on unemployment in fleet management, whereas the cybersecurity has the least effect, the same with the other analysis also. The second effective component for the fleet management is artificial intelligence, including machine and deep learning, with 24%. And here we have some messages to policymakers, to real sector, and also to academia. We can recommend that policymakers, unemployment and technology development, and new area and talented education should be programmed for especially medium and long-term programs. And when we came to the sectorial recommendation to maintain the competitive advantage and increase the resource efficiency, investing components of the digital transformation will affect human resource management policies as ranked in the tables. And lastly, we can say that limitations for future studies and message to academia and subjective evaluation on phenomenological method and increase the number of participants would be better, and apply for the different logistics area, as I have said before. Thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Sabrios. Now we are moving to another presenter. This is Associate Professor Victoria Mangarovska. So she is presented here on site. We have just received the information because Tanek Dimuski is asking to be an next presenter because he has some others of his presentation. Is it okay?
Yes.
So thank you very much once again, Professor Sabrios. Now we are moving to Tane Dimovski from North Macedonia, but he's online.
Yes, I'm online.
Okay.
Good morning. Just give me a chance to.
Can you share your presentation?
Yes, right away. Share screen. Hello, everyone. My name is Tane Dimovski from Macedonia. I'm PhD candidate. I did it this for this survey for government to citizen services. The main topic is improving G2C services through the Management Information System, MIC. I will start right away. Electronic government is considered to be government that transforms the internal and external relations of public organizations based on the use of information and communication technologies. The transformation is aimed at optimizing the provided public services, increasing the level of participation of citizens in public affairs, and improving the efficiency of the internal process. Told by Drigas and Kukanakis, 2013. E-government is expected to bring transparency and accountability in public administration, thereby improving the level of public trust in the government. With the efforts to digitize administrative processes and procedures, the internet is mostly used to facilitate interaction between government entities and citizens. It is well known that digital transformation can create benefits for both government and citizens. Therefore, most countries are making efforts to develop e-government and availability of information in the public sector. However, the revitalization of e-government is achieved only when citizens actively use the e-services provided by the government. Successful adoption of the e-government web portal business will help the government better deliver public services. Designing e-services and websites more useful and convenient will increase the chances of citizens adopting the new service delivery channel. E-government in the Republic of North Macedonia. The national portal for e-services is an electronic platform through which the citizens of the Republic of North Macedonia are enabled to receive information about public services and to use these services from competent authorities and the other entities that provided these services through the portal. The portal is established and managed by the Ministry of Information, Society and Administration, which is responsible for the availability and technical functioning of the portal, as well as the systems with which it is connected. The portal consists of a public part and a private part. The public part is available to all visitors, citizens, without the need for